Arts are the most important element in any Xenoblade game's combat system, and I wanted to do a video on them. However, since being good at the games isn't exactly my forte, so I can't talk about them gameplay-wise, I instead decided to talk about art name themes. That is, most of the party members you get throughout the series have some sort of theme going on with the names of their arts. It could be an ongoing motif with actual words in the names, or just some sort of tone or mood that they're trying to convey. More often than not, this is in some way tied to how this character acts and works as a person. Now, it's not gonna reveal some huge underlying aspect of their character that the story itself isn't gonna touch on, but it does tie into who they are. So today, I'm gonna be going through all the main playable party members in Xenoblade 1, and all the driver arts in Xenoblade 2. I'm obviously skipping Blade Specials, because that's probably 3 more videos worth of information on its own. I'm also skipping X because arts are tied to weapons in X, and every weapon is used by at least one party member, plus they also can be used by the avatar if you spec into a class that uses them, so the art names for those weren't designed around the characters, but around how the weapon works itself. The exception to this is signature arts. Each non-avatar party member has access to 2 arts that only they can use, and you can only get access to with your avatar by completing their affinity missions. I do want to make a video about what those arts have to say about their users, but I want to save that for the future. Now, the next main Xenoblade video I make is going to be X-related, so I'll leave it to the comments to decide whether or not it's going to be the signature art one or a different kind of sciencey one that I had in mind. The other one will be made at some point in the future, so don't worry about the one you don't choose never showing up. It's just, I want to add a little more interactivity. So with that out of the way, I will have to spoil both Xenoblades 1 and 2 up to the point where the final party member joins. Now, this isn't too big a deal for Xenoblade 2, but I will need to spoil the identity of 7 from Xenoblade 1, and that's a pretty big deal. So with that out of the way, we're going to just go in chronological order. Dixon and Mumcar don't count since they only get 2 arts, and you can only use the Minato with Dunban in the prologue, so the first character we actually have to talk about is the blonde boy himself, Shulk. Now, Shulk is a bit of a special case, because while most characters have 16 arts, which they can pick 8 of to actually use on their palette in combat, Shulk's talent art is literally being able to switch on the Minato and access a second palette of 8 arts. Because of this, there are only really 8 actual Shulk arts. The other 8 are just powers of the Minato that he happened to unlock, and yeah, those all have Minato in the name. I'm pretty sure there's a connection there, but I do think there's something that you can read into the 8, technically 9 if you count Turn Strike, arts that Shulk learns and presumably has invented on his own. The names of these are really matter-of-fact and straight to the point. Turn Strike, he turns around and strikes the enemy. Backslash, he slashes their back. Light Heal, he uses light to heal a light amount of damage. Slit Edge, he slits them with his edge. This doesn't really go with Shulk personality-wise. This doesn't really say anything about who he is as a person, but it does go a little bit into what he does. Shulk is a scientist, when it boils down to it. Yeah, he's a weapons researcher and he designs things, so he is far more on the engineering side than the scientific one, but he definitely has that analytical scientific mind going with him, and naming his arts something that are just straight to the point, this is what it is, that does seem to sort of work for him. Although, yeah, scientists tend to love goofing around when they're naming things, so it's not realistically accurate, but it does go with the type of mind that you have to do the kind of things Shulk does. Now, this connection does get a little more tenuous when you look at Stream Edge, Shadow Eye, and Battle Soul. Stream Edge, I guess because the blade ripples like water. Shadow Eye does sort of make sense because you need to strike from the shadows, you blend into them to avoid being detected by the enemy. But Battle Soul is probably the most metaphorical and emotionally charged art name Shulk actually has access to, so I think, and the fact that this is actually the last art he learns while leveling up after the adventure's already started and that kind of thing, I think this is more of Shulk's actual emotional side. He's a scientist, but that doesn't mean he's typical stoic nerd man. Real scientists like to goof off. We like having fun. Shulk likes having fun. Shulk has emotions. Battle Soul is just the one time he lets them slip through in his art naming, I guess. Moving on to Rein, we can definitely see a lot more of his personality slipping through with these art names compared to Shulk's. First off, Rein is impulsive, he's hot-headed, he likes to rush into battle headfirst. He's the crowd control guy and the face tank whose job is to get hit by everything so no one else can. Plus, he's got a bit of a cruder sense of humor when compared to Shulk, so what are we gonna see in Rein's arts? A lot more primitive and primal things, some words related to power, and a lot of dick jokes. Because, of course, if you thought One-Eyed Monster was the first one in the series, you are very, very wrong. You've got Bone Upper and Sword Drive. And Rein's voice lines for those very much support that being what they actually are. But in addition, you've got Hammer Beat, you've got Wild Down, Rage, Aura Burst, War Swing. Most of these are a little bit more militaristic sounding as well, which makes sense since Rein is actually a career soldier as opposed to Shulk, who's just a nerd who got the good sword. And just in general, they really let you feel the power that he has behind them. Rein is the muscliest member of the Xenoblade 1 team. So it does go to show that, yeah, that comes through in a lot of his arts, and animation-wise too. I'm pretty sure Rein's weapon is like just straight up the heaviest weapon type that all the characters in Xenoblade 1 have, and he throws that around pretty quickly, especially when he's doing something really spinny like War Swing, or the fact that he could just like 1-inch punch someone so hard they go flying back a huge distance, and it's the most damaging single hit attack in the game with Sword Drive. Yeah, it just shows that Rein's about one thing. He's about getting hit hard so no one else has to, and he's about hitting really, really hard, and I'm pretty sure that comes through a lot in most of these art names. Sharla, unfortunately, gets the short end of the stick yet again because all of her blue arts, and most of her arts are blue, are either bullets, blasts, or rounds, and her non-blue ones are also just pretty generic and specific. Now, yeah, I said that actually says something about Shulk, but for Sharla, I'm not really sure if it says anything about her herself. There are really two ways you could view this. One is, she's a medic, and there's really only one way to go about healing people, where there are a lot of ways to go about hurting people, so she has a lot less room to experiment with her arts than Rein does. So while they're both professional soldiers, they are both members of their respective colonies' defense force, Sharla is a lot more limited in what she can stray from the basics she's taught. Alternatively, it could just be, oh, yes, Colony 6 and 9 have very different philosophies when it comes to teaching their defense force soldiers. 9 allows a lot more experimentation and encourages individuality, possibly inspired by Dunban's ridiculous feats at the Battle of Sword Valley, whereas 6 depends a lot more on fighting as a unit, and everyone is expected to learn the same thing dependent on whatever weapon they decide to pick up. Dunban most definitely has the strongest theming we've seen so far, and he actually kind of has 3 things going on. First off is Cherry Blossoms, which only shows up in his talent art Blossom Dance and Binding Blossom. Second off is a general sort of poetic, romantic medieval fantasy heroic type thing going on. You can see this the most often things like Worldly Slash and Demon Slayer, but most of his art names do have a certain poetic charm going with them, which does make sense because he straight up recites a poem during Blossom Dance. And third off, and this encompasses several of his arts, is Weather. Now, arguably, you could see the Blossom stuff as cherry blossoms flying in the wind, but you've also got Gale Slash, Electric Gutbuster might be lightning, and then Tempest Kick, Heat Haze, Thunder, and Soaring Tempest, which all definitely have something to do with some form of weather. Now, I think this just more goes with who Dunban is as a person. He's just the kind of guy who appreciates the tranquility and sereneness of being out in nature no matter what, so you could kind of argue that it's more of a nature and inner peace type thing. That way the Blossom stuff and the weather stuff can all combine together into one thing there, because yeah, a lot of these are things that the normal person would consider negative, but there's still a lot of beauty to be found in shots of lightning, some sort of thing that wind can do with desert sand, or looking at a storm from above, or mirages formed by a haze of heat. All of this can be very beautiful, and that does go into a lot of his other arts, specifically the aura Serene Heart, which I think can sort of, it's not his talent art, but name-wise, I think Serene Heart can tie all of these together with a nice little bow. With the exception of, obviously, his more angry ones, like Jaws of Death, Final Flicker, and Demon Slayer, which can, I guess, just sort of show off the two sides of Dunban. He's a very calm and rational person who seems to be at inner peace with himself pretty much throughout the entire game, but when pushed, he's also a huge force to be reckoned with on the battlefield, and I think the kind of duality with the names of these arts does go to show that pretty well. Melia, unfortunately, also really suffers from Shulk syndrome in that 7 of her 16 arts are just elemental summons, so they don't really tell you anything other than Melia can summon elementals. Shadow Stitch and Starlight Kick do have a little bit of a duality going on with Light and Shadow, and Burst End and Mind Blast are kind of technically her real talent art since you can only use them during elemental bursts, so yeah, those do have some of the coolest sounding names out of all of them. And that's really it. You'd think that there'd be something that kind of plays up her royalty in some way, and while, yeah, Shadow Stitch plus Starlight Kick does sort of give you the she is half Homs and half Hyentia thing, but I don't really know. I think Melia kind of has the weakest out of all of them. Like, with Sharla's, yeah, they're boring, but at least there's a consistent theme going on. With Melia's, half of them have a theme because they're all variations on the same thing, but the other half are just attack name versions of things. None of them are just straight up descriptive, with the exception of maybe Hypnotize, but they're things that you'd expect to name in attack. So there's not really much to say about this, which is kind of unfortunate. While Monado Mondays hasn't gotten far enough for me to actually play as Riki or the next party member to have footage on screen, thankfully Riki's arts do make up for Melia's in spades. His theme goes through basically every art, and it's very obvious. It's basically its attack names in Napon dialect, plus they're really made kinda immature sounding for the most part. Cause, well, Riki is probably the most childish 40-year-old you're ever gonna meet, and also he's a Napon, so why wouldn't his arts be in the Napon dialect? Now, there's not really anything to highlight here. That's just the theme for all of them. There's not really any extra thing you can read into it other than with behave. Remember, Riki is a father of many, so that's probably the only thing that really hints at his hidden depths within his actual art names, because, yeah, he's kind of a bad father, but he is still a father, and he does have a bit of parental wisdom, which he shares with Dunban at one point. So, yeah, Riki is simple, but he's good, and that's really all that we like about him as a character, so it makes sense, hey! As a Homs, Fiora only has 4 battle arts and 1 talent art, as opposed to the 17 in total that everyone else gets. Despite that, her personality does show in there just a little bit. With Butterfly Step in Hidden Thorn, it's taking 2 very traditional feminine icons of flowers and butterflies, and turning them into a female character's 2 most potent attacks. So yeah, her independent, free-willed Genki Girl type thing is really on show there, and in addition to that, Power Smash, Hidden Thorn, and Lacerate are just things that you'd expect her to scream out in battle. Those are in character for her to say, so making her actually scream them in battle does make a lot of sense. Moving on to Robo Fiora, really the obvious theme is a lot of these sound very mechanical or robotic, like things that you'd add protocol to the end to if you were telling a non-sentient thing to go into. This includes, but is not necessarily limited to, Healing Energy, possibly Zero Gravity, Ether Drain, Second Gear, Lock On, Mag Storm, Shutdown, Guard Shift, Power Drain, and Speed Shift. In addition, Air Fang is her break art, which goes along with Air Slash, one of Shulk's break arts, which just sort of meshes together, showing her relationship and connection to Shulk, and is just a bit of a foreshadowing of her secret Innocence skill tree, which powers her up a ton when she's in battle with Shulk. Beyond that, the only other art I can really talk about is Final Cross, which it's coming from Maineth as opposed to being something Fiora probably thought of or had programmed into her herself. So, Final Cross, Maineth is a deity-like figure. There's some other Christian symbolism in the game. That's all that really is. But with that, we can move on to Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Rex is actually the hardest Xenoblade 2 character to pin down. First off, his main weapon is the Aegis Sword, or Broadsword. Gramps taught him how to use that weapon, so those aren't arts he created. The only thing they tell us is that Gramps is kind of unoriginal because they're pretty generic attack names. Second off, Rex just straight up has the most weapon types, so there's a lot more wiggle room for the message to be lost, but there is a message to be seen. It's heroism, and not in the same way that Dunban has, although technically, yes, you'll see, but all forms of heroism. At least one art on most of his weapons has some sort of word that you use when you're trying to build up the symbol or the mythos around a great hero. Not to mention the fact that he's the only character to have more than one actual Monado art when using the Monado. He has all four, which makes a lot of sense. He's the hero. But words like power, strong, mighty, brave, rebel, all of those, while they don't necessarily all go to form one heroic archetype, but those and even feral, which could sort of go with a nature-y theme, the hero fighting for nature to save the world from someone who wishes to destroy it because they love the nature and the natural beauty of it, that kind of thing. They're all things that would go to a different kind of hero. Now, Rex is kind of a very generic heroic character in terms of the heroicness in his actual personality, so it does kind of make sense. He's taking all of these heroic aspects of different great heroes in the past and combining them together to form another new hero who will do his best to save Allrest. I kind of like this. It gives him a lot more credit than a lot of his fans do. Nia, being the resident sassy Welsh Catgirl, has a kind of no-brainer theme. 2 arts for every weapon she has access to, with the exception of the Monado and Fiora's knives, have an animal name in them. And the other 2 are just kind of generic attack names. So, yeah, the Catgirl has an animal theme. That's kinda easy. Now, the other thing is, she also has a bit of a theme of circles. Now, with her backstory that gets revealed a long time after Zeke joins, so I'm not going to actually spoil it, there is a bit of a theme of circles being like a symbol of renewal for her. Nothing really goes full circle in her character arc, but she does finish a character arc, and that's like half a circle. She has twin rings, so you put 2 half circles together, you get a full circle. I don't know. It might just be a reference to the fact that her main weapon is twin rings. And yeah, that's kind of about it. A lot of her even non-healing arts do have a kind of tranquil, serene healing type spin to it, but a lot of her attacking arts are also kind of really strong and brutal kind of things. Like, she's got just straight up brutal blade and then shadow slice both on Great Axe. Like, it kind of runs the gamut, which does also sort of go with her personality. She can be kind of violent if she wants to. If she lashes out hard, but when she's calm and mellow, she's nice. And of course, this goes together with the animal theme. Sometimes the more savage-sounding ones or the less savage-sounding ones are more tied into the 2 animal arts per weapon, and sometimes they're just like actual puns on the animal, like Cattle Driver or Wolf Fang or Scorpion Tail. A lot of the animal-related arts are things the animals actually do. Jackal Claw, Raptor Beat's a bit of a tenuous one. Dolphin Spin, because they like to flip around and stuff. Falcons can turn in midair. It's a pretty easy one to find. Sora only gets 12 arts, so his are actually really easy. It's just, again, like Riki, things Tora would say. His are a bit more composed because in some aspects he's actually more mature than Riki. He's smarter than Riki at the very least, so they're just kind of attack names with a Napani spin on them. And the more interesting super Napani part comes from Tora's voice lines when saying them, because they're a lot more out there than the actual art names. Like, Rigid Shield, that could be an art on anyone. Big Boost even. Spinning Cutter's just an attack name, so is Steady Drill. But then you got also Pow Pow Cannon, Booming Buster, Boom Boom Laser, and Swooshing Slash, so there's a bit of variance there, but if you listen to the actual voice clips, they're pretty Nopani. Vandamm gets only 4 arts, but I guess they really wanted to drive something home with him because 3 of them have muscle in the name. And the last one is Fast Twitch, which also really implies him being a strong person. They don't even need to play up how muscular Vandamm is. Why did they do that? They could've... I guess he only has one thing on his mind, and that's his own musculature. I don't know. Vandamm and muscles. That's all I got. Rex doesn't even mention muscles when he uses Rock's weapons, so it was clearly a Vandamm thing, so... I guess he's just proud of his muscles. If I looked like that, I'm not even sure I would be, because I don't think that's how humans work. Morag has several art themes going on at the same time, which might play into the fact that she's an older, more experienced fighter than most of the party, or that the extra stuff in her character is a lot more nuanced and you need to dig a little deeper to find. First off, all of her Whip Sword arts are Azure Striker Form the Second. I made a video about all of her styles and that kind of thing, so that's a thing that we already know about. Second off, she has a bit of a fire theme going on, even with weapon types that aren't always going to be fire, like Inferno Wheel with Twin Rings. She has a couple fiery tangential things with Perdido, who is fire, and then, like, 2, possibly 3 of her Whip Sword arts are also fire-related. She's just got fire in general. Next off, she's got a bit of a regal and royal theme going on with Admiral Waltz and Crown Splitter, which are just kind of cool-sounding things, but also play into the fact that, yeah, she is actual royalty. Then, she's got a bit of a celestial theme going on with Eclipse Blade, Celestial Flash, Blade of the Abyss. Those all kind of sound not necessarily spacey, but like mythological, looking up at the skies, there's gods in them parts, that kind of thing. And then she's also got a mythical beast thing. Dragons show up the most. She's got Rising Dragon, Twin Dragons, Dragon's Bane, Dragon Bane Shot, stuff like that. But then she's also got Ogre Slam and Sacred Beast's Blessing, which, yep, mythological beasts. It just kind of goes with a coat of arms, maybe. Because, yeah, she's royalty, so she's going to have her own coat of arms, and you can actually see the more ordained one a bit more up close than any of the other ones in-game, so I guess that kind of goes with things like that. You'd usually see things like unicorns on those in reality, so adding dragons, which kind of don't exist in the Xenoblade 2 universe, as well as things that definitely don't exist, like ogres or just generic sacred beasts. Yeah, that kind of makes sense. It all goes together to paint a bit of a picture of Morag. She's the Flamebringer, which kind of brings in all the fire stuff. Although, interestingly, in her New Game Plus Torna Blades, she's got a bit of a weird theme going on. She gets animal art names too for a couple weapons, as well as flowers for some reason. She gets Marigold and Bloom, Thorn Assault, Rhododendron, and then just straight up No Love Lost, which could be a Love Me Not type thing. I don't really know. I don't think flowers fit Morag very well. Like, they just... Cherry Blossoms I can see fitting Dunban. I don't think flowers in general, or cherry blossoms in general, would fit Morag particularly well. So those might be more of a Torna thing than a Morag thing, but they're there. That's another theme that exists. Zeke is also a really easy theme to find. He's just really, really over the top. Even his more generic sounding ones are really, really over the top in a way. He's also got Shell Shot on a Bit Ball, which is probably a turtle reference. And that's really it. A lot of them were just things that he designed to scream out in his ridiculous Bringer of Chaos voice. Honestly, yeah, he does have a lot more serious side, and when he gets serious about something, he gets very serious. Plus, he's just straight up one of the best fighters in the world. So, a lot of this is most likely just things he invented as part of his goofball, not serious, bumbling persona, as opposed to the way he actually is deep down. Interestingly enough, he does have a theme, but only in his Monado arts. Now, I didn't mention this before, but Nia, as I said, doesn't get animal theme for Shulk or Fiora. Morag is, for some reason, the only one who doesn't get an actual Monado art when she uses the Monado. whereas Zeke actually gets his own theme in there. That being actual mythological things, not just the beasts that Morag gets. He gets Helios Circle, Helios being a sun god, Ragnarok Slash. Did you watch that Thor movie? It was pretty good. And then Nemesis Beat, Nemesis also originating as a god name. That's really it. Zeke appears simple on the outside, and his art names are just kind of going along with that. They're very simple, and they go along with Zeke's personality, or at least the one he projects to the world. And with that, we're done, so thank you so much for watching. Subscribe if you haven't yet. Remember to comment about which X video you want to see down below, and that's pretty much it. Have a good day, and until next time, this is Luxin, signing off.